Season's beatings. The streets are covered by white powder, somewhat resembling snow, as the meth heads gather around the trash fire to tell Christmas stories, before passing out in the streets making snow angels as they convulse. I hope you've gotten your loved ones their gifts early because the stores are all empty, but not from shoppers. Mothers lovingly tuck their illegitimate children in for the night, in hopes that Santa will leave them a new father under the tree, and not a scurry can be heard, except for the incredibly large rats, as the home invader disguised as Kris Kringle sneaks down our chimney. This holiday season, we take a trip back in time to visit a beloved survival horror game set in New York during Christmas, although anyone who's been there recently can tell you, it's a whole lot worse in real life. We're playing Condemned: Criminal Origins. A 360 launch title released in '05, Condemned was already a little visually aged before it even premiered, looking like a high-res PS2 game. I had never owned a gaming PC at this time, however, so it personally felt like a huge leap forward moving to the 360. And while many of Ami's stories are blatant lies, Dead or Alive 4 really did become the party game in my delinquent friend group.
I know, Fibber. I'd just like to embellish a little. It's called storytelling. Try setting the mood sometime.
That being said, many of Ami's anecdotes are based on real stories, and it was love at first sight the moment I saw DOA 4 at a roach-infested motel. And that is what made me get a 360, with Condemned being the first choice in games to test it out. Truth be told, I was running this thing off a TV VCR combo, so at the time it was the best game I had ever seen. But oversized HD TVs were becoming the fad at the time, and being a smart young man, I decided to finance a 50-inch, and then the recession happened. But before I lost everything, we were having a blast. The dark atmosphere and real-time lighting, along with the high resolution, made this an amazing introduction to the world of HD gaming. And although a very disappointing run while experimenting with a little-known substance that rhymes with Malvia ruined that for me when I started looking way too close at the details, this is a series that I still fondly remember, and one that could have gone further in another timeline. And the mishandling of the sequel was so disappointing that it deserves its own video, the short version being that we were robbed of what should have been a successful horror franchise. However, we are here to discuss where the series began, so let's walk and talk as we join forensic investigator Ethan Thomas as he arrives at an abandoned warehouse. Met by Detective Dickerson, he is escorted towards our crime scene, where we find the latest victim of the Matchmaker, a serial killer known for abducting young women and leaving their corpses posed in romantic scenarios with male mannequins.
Dude, what kind of freaky-ass hentai game are we playing?
Contacting our lab tech Rosa, we begin what is one of the more painful parts of the game, interactive investigation. It does add a bit more, although it always brings the action to a halt, and in many cases spoon feeds you information you didn't really need or could have figured out on your own. We quickly uncover a mode of death, strangulation, and take note that the suspect is missing their right index finger. Rosa also points out the repeated facial markings on the male mannequins, but before we can think too deeply into that, Dickerson notices the smell of a lit cigarette coming from the adjacent room, and so all three men arm up to investigate. Steamrolling in, we find only an empty room, but it doesn't take long to notice the sounds of movement coming from the fire escape. And so we Scooby-Doo split up to attempt a pincer maneuver on the intruder. Gun in hand, the early gameplay is more like a first-person shooter, and you would not be mistaken to say this one looks like Fear, as it originally started off as a spin-off to that series. However, instead of fighting little girls, we are up against homeless meth heads, and quickly encounter our first, who we promptly help by contacting a community responder, by which I mean we shoot them in the face. Having assisted the young scholar in finding a location to nap, we continue our search, making our way towards the circuit breaker in order to get the lights going. However, our detective is spooked by a loud noise and trips over himself like an idiot, losing his gun and putting him at the mercy of our eavesdropper, who issues a very simple visual threat before strolling off. Unarmed and now surrounded by the sounds of approaching footsteps belonging to crazed vagrants, we are left with no options but to grab the nearest blunt object, so that we may beat the ever-living piss out of everyone in our path. When I say I love the combat in Condemned, I really love the combat in Condemned. Horror is my thing, love the genre. But as mentioned, my favorite part was always when we got a badass last girl who brought the fight to the villain. And this is one of the few games that actually feels like that. This first one keeps it simple, with shoulder button attacking and blocking like Oblivion, and a kick button added to throw the enemy off balance, breaking defense. You will very quickly be given a rechargeable stun gun, which is great for group control or disarming an enemy that is carrying a gun. We find ourselves at a dead end with Detective Dickerson calling out from the adjacent building, tossing us an axe we can use to smash through specific doors, which we promptly do in order to continue ascending upwards in order to meet up with our colleagues. Weapons will be the main mode of solving puzzles in this game, smashing locks, cracking safes, basically a stand-in for keys. On the other hand, every investigation will consist of you being locked into a small area, trying to find the object you need to point your camera or camera-like device at, so that you can then click a button, in order to sit around while Rosa explains everything to you like you're a toddler. Even in 2005, games were doing this BS. Up top, our mystery man gets the jump on us, holding us at gunpoint while giving us his manifesto. But before he can get to the good part, the two other agents burst in, and, in a strange showing of restraint, wait to shoot the armed suspect pointing a gun at them, and so, he shoots them, as expected. We are spared, however, as our new friend needs Ethan to stick around, for now, and decides to keep him safe by tossing him out of a third-floor window. A short time later, Ethan wakes in his own apartment, transported there by a family friend, Malcolm Van Horn, who apparently knows vague things about Ethan's connections to vague powers this series will never fully elaborate on. We do know, however, that we are now wanted in connection with the deaths of the two officers from the warehouse, and that our mystery trigger man may have been watching us for several months. There's very little time for him to explain the situation to us, as police are currently on their way, which makes me question why he didn't just choose any other location on the planet but this one to take you. However, we quickly head down the fire escape, searching the nearby area for clues about our possible stalker. We soon find some photos conveniently sitting at the top of a nearby trash can, almost as if someone wanted Ethan to find them, and Rosa, being your anchor in both games, holds it down by sneaking you as much information as possible behind the back of the bureau.
Oh yeah, big booty Latina for the win.
Wait till the sequel, her glow-up redesign ain't too bad.
Oh snap, can I play that one?
It's all yours, I'm pretty sure you'd like that one better. Plus, getting drunk gives you a power-up. For now, it is time to search the metro and connected underground infrastructure for clues, and we're probably gonna skip a lot. Condemned does have several memorable and somewhat unique locations, but they're all at the end of the game, with the first section being oddly similar to Silent Hill 3's, which had only come out 2 years earlier. After a whole lot of wandering and a whole lot of physical assaults, we stumble into our suspect's crime den, where in typical stereotyped fashion, he's hung newspaper articles along the walls like a teen girl collecting K-pop posters. Although we have eyes, and I assume Ethan can read, we ask Rosa for the breakdown, and she informs us that every single article is related to cases that we were personally assigned to, all serial killers, several cold cases. It should be very clear to the player what is going on here. Sadly, smooth-brain Ethan still needs Rosa to hold his hand on this one, but before she can mansplain it to him, he is jumped from behind by his stalker. However, several point-blank shots with a sawed-off are enough to startle him, sending us off on a foot chase as he flees. This is where the game loses a lot of points with me. We will chase this guy across roughly 3 stages, and they are so randomly thrown together with zero thought put into layout that I never have any sense of where I really am at any point, despite playing through this game multiple times. You will almost never get lost because of how linear the levels are, but there is absolutely no way I could tell you the difference between generic office building A and generic office building B. And you will move between these locations with no real sense of where you are heading versus where you came from. It almost feels like Duke Nukem 3D, but much bigger. Train hopping, we scoot on over to the next platform in an attempt to cut off our suspect, somehow. And after dealing with a few bums that skipped out on the fare, we run into one of Amy's ex-girlfriends.
Shut up, dude. That does not look... Oh, dear God. Never mind. That does look like someone I dated. Ugh. I made out with that. Ugh.
Soon we find ourselves in the lair of the matchmaker, the very same criminal we were investigating at the start. So for now, Ethan and Rosa are fairly certain they know who their stalker is. And looking further into his collection of mannequins, Rosa is able to use the magic of BS to instantly test the materials over the phone, giving us the location of the department store they came from. Now with a new lead, we make our way towards the next train out of here as we finally head towards the good part of the game. Horror game or California shopping mall, can you tell the difference? I'm just being facetious. You can clearly see that this is a horror game because it's less dangerous, also the lack of fecal matter like odor in the air. Once or twice, this game has thrown a few horror filters our way, but around this time the game decides to actually give us the good stuff, with several of the mannequins coming to life in order to attack you. You get used to it around your 50th run, and are usually able to spot them pretty easy for a cheap attack. But on a first playthrough, you may be pleasantly surprised when you see one casually step down from the display. After a bit of wandering, we come across a murder scene similar to what we witnessed in the opening. But by this point I'm a bit desensitized, since we've taken out at least 50 random people ourselves on the way here, and the argument of self-defense is shaky at best. Unlike the previous scenes, the victim is male, and with some more hand-holding by Rosa, we confirm that this is in fact the matchmaker. So, it would seem in a stunning twist, our stalker is killing the serial killers, which would actually make him the hero since he's been stopping criminals this entire time, while we've been breaking into random places and beating mentally ill drug addicts to death. Skipping ahead, we meet up with Rosa for a face-to-face at the library to plan our next move. It would seem our serial killer X has been making his way down our list of cases, and another perp, alias the Torturer, is most likely the next target. Only problem is, there is a known suspect, but he's missing, along with the star witness, and so we make our way over to the school associated with both parties because... I don't really know, man, it's a video game. The school is probably my favorite of the levels just for the combination of constant action and good atmosphere with minimal pauses for hand-holding story segments, although it still suffers from the same nonsensical layout of every other location, with rooms that connect with no real rhyme or reason, and a labyrinthian gym, locker room, and shower no school would ever have. But I do enjoy the lunch lady mini-boss, who stands out as one of the only non-generic encounters in the game, even more memorable than the final boss, although in this run she went down pathetically easy. Deep in the basement shower room, we find the body of the missing Mr. Tibbets, stuffed into a locker. We were too late to rescue the poor man, and so we begin searching for clues.
Help me!
Sir, you need to quit mumbling. I don't understand you.
Come on, dude, he doesn't have any lips. Somehow still alive despite the bleed out and shock he would suffer from a missing arm and lips, Mr. Tibbets informs us that his assailant, the Torturer, was interrupted mid-torturing by our serial killer X, who beat him unconscious before dragging the body off. Having finished expositing that crucial information to us, his body gives out as he finally succumbs to his injuries.
Amazing timing.
Even more amazing, Rosa was able to take a dirt sample from his clothing using her early 2000s burner phone and instantly traces the source to a specific farm in the nearby area.
Oh, fuck this. I'm getting a drink.
Bring me back one. Van Horn shows back up randomly and conveniently to give us a lift to the farmhouse, along with another boring speech about vague BS that does not matter. I'm really not skipping anything important. This was around the time Lost came out, and this game was doing the very same mystery box trash that was popular, asking a whole lot of questions we could not possibly care about that are meant to be answered in a sequel that nobody bought. Arriving at the farmhouse, it is actually one of the better scenarios of the game, in that it feels like slow burn horror with a setup, having you follow the scrollings of our deranged serial killer around the house using a blacklight. The main complaint being that this is something we should have done at the beginning of the game, and not mid-climax between two combat-focused levels. It's also something Silent Hill Downpour would later borrow and admittedly do better, and when that game outdoes you, it's time for some serious self-reflection. Eventually we come across the body of the torturer, having succumbed to a self-inflicted demise, impaling himself on a fire stoker, which some would say is a terrible choice, but I appreciate that he committed this act as a final tribute to his idol Pyramid Head. The guy wanted to go out a real fan. Well, guess who wandered in announcing himself? The son of a bitch we're looking for. And so Ethan, deciding to be a sneaky sneak, decides to cover himself in warm blood and viscera in order to play possum to get the jump on SKX, when any sane person would have just hid in the closet. That way they can block off the exit to keep their target from escaping. SKX escapes. Thankfully, someone randomly blocked the stairs off with a bed frame, and so we chase him around the top floor, eventually cornering SKX and beating him across the face until, surprise, Van Horn sneaks up and hits our reset button.
What a dick. Here's your drink. It's a rum and coke, also I spit in it.
Delicious. We wake up alone with SKX in a barn and restrained, as he begins to give us the "you and I are not too disalike" speech, which in this case is quite literally true. The both of them go after serial killers, they both have zero issue taking lives, and the only difference is that he is better at the job than Ethan. The only argument one could make is that Ethan has been given the authority to go after these criminals legally, but again, we have been murdering countless hobos non-stop this entire game, so Ethan has no leg to stand on here. He kinda sucks. And then SKX cuts off our finger. Apparently we were just pretending to be tied up, and easily jump down as Old Man Van Horn magically reappears, this time jumping SKX, before giving us the vague order to stop the evil person, to stop the evil thing from happening. As much as I clown on the story, this final run is a great way to end the game. No filler, no fake CSI stuff, not even your stun gun to cheat the fights, just you and a stick. And occasionally a machine gun. However, at the end it is a bit disappointing to fight the same generic enemies on repeat, especially when you understand the timing. At some point I felt bad, like I was just beating on helpless people, and then I couldn't figure out the button prompt since I can't see that well, and just kept hitting this poor guy over and over and over, trying to figure out how to end the fight. Now, with the last boss, I'll admit I did it on purpose. It was kind of funny. The evil whatever defeated, Van Horn gives us a ride back home, explaining that we have only begun our fight against the darkness, and will continue to fight it in brand new adventures coming to PlayStation 3. As for SKX, he was Van Horn's nephew this entire time, which is why he wanted to save both him and Ethan. However, Ethan ain't about that, and demands to know where SKX is, only to discover he's been tied up in the trunk this entire time. Now, the once deadly serial killer is at our mercy, but Van Horn is not about to just let us take his life. We are given one last choice as the player. Do we pull the trigger, or do we let him go?
We shoot him, duh. That was Condemned, and yeah, I'm taking over the ending, because we are on a tight schedule, and I'm the pro here, so... Fun little action horror title, bit more action than horror, but it's really good at pulling that first part off, so I really don't care if it fails at the other. Yes, the detective stuff is boring. I do not have the attention span for that crap, but when you are bashing in creeps left and right, it just feels so good. Story, it's bad, but again, I mostly play arcade games, yo, so I don't really need something to be complex to have fun. And this one is just fun, plain and simple. You will have a good time, believe me. And speaking of time, that is what we are out of. The holidays are approaching, and like always, we are really behind. So, big thank you to all of those condemned souls who watched and all those amazing people buying up the adopts. And make sure you keep them fireplaces lit, because it's starting to get cold and I might need a warm place to pass out.